I suppose we've got to make this clear right up front. The Hunt, or Black Label, or Track, whatever you want to call it, is a Russian take on Monolith's Condemned franchise, which came out around about 3 years after the first Criminal Origins game, and a few months after the sequel Bloodshot had hit the shelves in 2008. Sharing more than a passing resemblance in presentation and how the game handles, it didn't really come as a shock to me to discover that this game didn't get released in the UK or the US, as I can imagine Sega's legal team took one look at what Orion were putting together and dropped the hammer on it in no uncertain terms. Which is a hell of a shame, given that Orion clearly wanted a mainstream release. While the game features full English voice acting, all the text is only available in Russian or French, with the latter patchable through a third party. Localization aside, the game itself is a rock-solid first-person survival horror mashup of stealth and outright brutal melee combat, as you assume the role of an unwitting Russian programmer caught up as the final contestant of The Hunt, where the mark of completely indeterminate composition is passed to you by a friend. Being the 10th and final recipient of this mark, you can't pass it on, leaving you only one option: to fight your way through the streets of this dystopian nightmare to beat the game by its own rules. Along the way, you're granted nominal aid by a third party, which we'll go into in the spoilery part of this review, but for now, take it as read, you're here for one thing only: beating the shit out of machete-swinging psychopaths hell-bent on collecting the bounty on your head. In order to keep your guts on the inside, where they belong, you're able to make use of a goodly assortment of improvised and conventional weapons, from bits of pipe up to and including the devastating AK-74 wielded by... Anyway, what's important is that this is where the Hunt immediately begins to take steps away from Condemned's formula and, to me, for the better. Stamina and weapon degradation are completely done away with, refining the combat down to a much more arcadey back and forth of parry, riposte and swing. Picking fights with more than one enemy are still borderline suicidal early on, but at least you have the ability to actually run the fuck away from a bad situation, rather than lurch a short distance before succumbing to an asthma attack. Your choice of weapon also becomes more tactical now. Rather than forcing you to grab whatever bit of detritus isn't on the verge of falling apart, you can now pick up something early on in a level that suits your playstyle and keep hold of it until a better option comes along. The enemies you'll be facing are, for the most part, pretty simple fare, starting off with sewer-dwelling scavengers strip-mining the city's own crumbling infrastructure, before pitting you against full-on professional hunters who will use their superior numbers and better equipment to make your life a living hell. This is why, early on, the game introduces a mechanic that evens the odds nicely: stealth kills. Being able to get the drop on an enemy and quietly take them down feels particularly rewarding to achieve, and actually neatly leads me to the other mechanic that, in my opinion, is a masterstroke: gambling. Right as you await to discover that you're now part of this Running Man-style blood sport, the hostess points out that you, as well as other viewers, can bet on the upcoming action to earn money, which you will need. I'm not kidding. Dotted around each level, you'll find vending machines that can dispense endless quantities of first aid kits, body armour and trip mines. They all cost more than you can afford by just scrounging for the odd ruble here and there. To survive, you'll need to buy into the very game that's trying to kill you. As a mechanic to get the player invested in their progress, it's a neat little idea. As a by-proxy morality system, it's absolute fucking genius. For as long as you take the moral high ground and simply fight to survive, you're starving yourself for resources, intentionally denying yourself access to equipment you sorely need. To get an edge, you need to kill in the ways the powers that be want you to kill, by stealth or headshots or executions, whatever it takes to get some sweaty gopnik's looks off somewhere. It's sleazy and it's cruel, and I fucking love it. Speaking of sleaze, visually the Hunt does borrow a great deal from Condemned's palette. Urban sprawls and moody lighting obscuring potential threats, even going so far as to mimic the full-body animations for moving through cramped areas that Condemned used as well. While never really accomplishing anything truly noteworthy, at least nothing I can mention without spoilers, the Hunt is visually serviceable. To keep this brief then, the Hunt isn't the simple copy-paste it could have been. If you enjoy the original Condemned and you want more, or if you just want an entertaining first-person brawler, this is definitely worth tracking down. Of all the games that Orion have made, this is probably my favourite. However, there's more to this that I'd like to talk about, but since it's spoiler territory, let's give those of you who want to play it by themselves some time to bail. There we go. Alright. So, previously in my review of Condemned, I likened it to David Fincher's Seven, a comparison the game itself pretty blatantly omits early on. In that review, I also complained that the game fails to take the main lesson that the movie conveyed, which was chasing down closure, failing to end when the time is right. Comparatively, and this actually led me to go and watch it again before I wrote this review, The Hunt feels like a spiritual hybrid of The Running Man and Death Race 2000, this hyper-violent satire of bloody bread and circuses politics used to keep a population docile, executed with plenty of B-movie schlock that manages to artfully walk the line between brutality and outright stupidity. Early on, The Hunt plays things pretty straight. You're mostly running for your life and scrapping with street-walking thugs who aren't even aware you're marked, you're just in the way. It's only shortly after you hook up with the White Label, the rebel group trying to subvert the show and free you, that we pull a Dusk Till Dawn tone switch and find ourselves going up against a bunch of cannibalistic mole people that just seem to be living down there. They're not part of the planned hunt, so clearly this city just has its own chud problem, because why the fuck not? Anyway, we push through this series of tunnels, witnessing these heavily inbred hills-have-eyes looking motherfuckers imprisoning and butchering whoever's unlucky enough to stray into their territory, and thanks to some directions from a helpful old bum, reach the surface. I should take a moment as well to really praise the storyboard cutscenes in this game. Feeling a little like Max Payne's more stylized graphic novel approach, these little interludes cleverly combine what exposition we need with a little buffer to allow the next level to load. It's such a great little idea, and the quality of the voice acting and music used in these vignettes is really solid. Again, it's a real shame this game didn't come to the UK or the US, because it really feels like Orion gave this game a lot more time and effort than some of their other stuff. Getting back to the plot, and we're really only getting crazier from here on out, we find daylight, only to be told beforehand that the abandoned theme park we're heading through is populated by a gang of clowns. Honest to God, jumping out of birthday cakes and listening to Russian ska music, murder clowns. It's such a swerve that the fact that the game actually managed to turn this into a really effective bit of storytelling is an even greater accomplishment. It would have been easy to have this be your usual dark carnival of rotting roller coasters and neglected mascots, but instead the place is clean, bright, and populated with some of the most disturbing implications so far. This isn't a theme park that was taken over by the Hunt, this was a theme park built for the Hunt. The gory images, the deranged and hyper-violent ghost train ride, all of which is constructed with the intention of normalising the violence the Hunt creates. You know, get them while they're young, just like smoking. Suffice it to say, the Hunt manages to juggle comical levels of violence with some shockingly bleak content. Wife terrified of her husband who's now killing people for money? Check. Transcript of a presenter narrating the gruesome death of a woman by a psychopathic hunter called Bug? Check. Despite delivering it all through text, it's hugely successful at painting this gruesome picture of a society gleefully charting its own self-annihilation. It all comes to a head in the final chapter, where we take the fight to the TV station, running the whole shebang, and cover bloody swath through the hunters and private security and their final line of defense, the Spec Ops censors sent in to keep the rogue elements from getting off script. At that point, desperately short on equipment, unable to gamble on your progress, the final battle against the reigning champion is every bit as brutal as it should be. You leave everything on the field, cave the fucker's skull in with an axe, and you end it. And then, the White Label, the people who'd been guiding you in your journey this entire time, turn out to be affiliated with the Hunt, a ruse to boost ratings by getting someone further than ever before. Instead of taking on the system and beating it, you discover that you're just a well-positioned pawn shunted to the far edge of the board. It knocked the guts out of me, leading perhaps to my ever-favourite downer ending. In a typical story, you might figure the hero finds a way to escape or turn the tables, but all of that's already out of the question. The real head of the Hunt returns to forcibly retire the idiot who orchestrated your unlikely survival, but with the reigning champion dead, the Hunt lacks a figurehead. Naturally, he offers the protagonist a job. Money, status, all to do something he's clearly already good at. And the protagonist thinks about it. No rebellion, no taking the moral high ground. It's such a beautifully Russian ending. I fucking loved it. After setting up a hugely unjust and brutal world for us to fight through, it ends on such a bleak yet realistic note. How are you, one lucky idiot with an unhealthy aptitude for slitting throats, going to undo something so powerful, so pervasive? And the honest answer is that you can't. You shut your mouth, weigh your options, and figure out what's going to be best for you. You're selfish because, at the end of the day, we can't all be the hero. For a hard-to-find game that could so easily be written off as an easy cash-in on another franchise's fame, The Hunt manages to refine the formula it bases itself on and then move on from it, to tell a story that swerves between crass and genuinely disturbing so easily that at times it can feel like you're playing two different games. But anyway, that's enough from me. This is a solid recommendation from me. Arguably the best game that you've never played. Hunt it down. Give it a go. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to me ramble, and I will catch you next time. Have a good one. Goodbye.